Okay, today we're going to talk about indicator two, least common multiple and greatest common factor. Learning targets, I can find the greatest common factor of two numbers up to 100, and I can find the least common multiple of any two numbers up to 12. The least common multiple is the smallest number that both numbers will divide into evenly, and the greatest common factor is the largest number that will divide evenly into both numbers. So right here we have some multiples of 8. So 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 2 is 24, so forth and so on. And then here we have multiples of 12, 12, 24, 36, 12 times 4 is 48, 12 times 5 is 60, so forth and so on. So now let's find the numbers that both sets of numbers have in common. So what do they have in common? What's the first number you see that appears here and here? 24. What's another number that appears here and here? 48. So we see that there are several multiples. So 24 and 48 are common multiples. Okay, so we said 24 and 48. That's what you want to write right there. Mm-hmm. You can, but we don't need to for this example because we're trying to find the least. We're finding the smallest number that's a multiple of both numbers. Okay? So, what is the smallest number they have in common? 24. So, that's your least common multiple. So, they're all multiples, and they're both common multiples, but the smallest or the least common multiple is 24. Okay? Now, what is the difference between the multiple and the least common multiple? I really just kind of said it. What is the difference between a multiple? Like 24 and 48 are both multiples, but we said 24 is the least common multiple. So, mm-hmm. Somebody said something. So, what's the difference between the least common multiple and just the plain old multiple? Thank you. The least common multiple is the smallest multiple they have in common. Very good. And that's what I was looking for. It's the smallest multiple they have in common. Oop, I have to remember not to write in cursive. I almost started writing in cursive. I have some students who can read cursive, but some are like, mm-mm. Okay, so that's our LCM. So now let's take it a little further. Now we're going to talk about factors. Factors are numbers that you can multiply to get those numbers. So we're using the same numbers, 8 and 12. Write down all the numbers we can multiply to get 8. What times what equals 8? 1 times 8. Okay, so 1 comma 8. And somebody said something else? 2 times 4. Anything else? Okay. Now let's look at the numbers we can multiply to get 12. We know 1 times 12. What else? 2 times 6. 3 times 4. So these are all factors. Factors are numbers that you can multiply to get a number. So if I said 3 times 2 is 6, that 3 and the 2 are factors of 6. So we want to find the greatest common factor. What is the largest number that both these sets of numbers have in common? So they have a 2 in common. They have a 1 in common. And what else do they have in common? A 2. Okay, I'm just going to circle those, okay? And then what else do they have in common? 4. So what's the largest number that both sets of numbers have in common? 4. So that's your greatest common factor. But there is an easier way. Y'all knew I was leaving. I needed that to do that for dramatic effect. But there is an easier way to do these. That's why we went over the rules of divisibility, because you really need it. Also, we're going to use this method when we simplify fractions, when we simplify ratios, we're going to use this method. So you want to really get it down in your spirit. And we're going to practice a lot on this. So let's consider 8 and 12. We call this method the ladder method. Some people call it the upside down cake method because of the way it looks. I think I say ladder method. Sometimes I'll say cake method. So now we're going to write 8 and 12, and we're going to put an upside down division sign up under it. So write 8 and 12 and put your upside down division sign. That's the first layer of your cake, or the first rung of your ladder. And I know we already found that the GCF was 4, but let me, for dramatic effect, start with the smallest number. So what goes into 8 and 12? They're both even numbers. This ends in 8 and this ends in 2, so they're both even numbers. So what goes into even numbers? 2. So we're going to put a 2 out here. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 2 goes into 12 6 times. Or 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 6 is 12. You know, multiplication is the opposite of division. So that's why I gave you your multiplication table. So, and I have some extra copies if you lost yours. So multiplication won't be a barrier for you. Okay, now we can go a little further because 4 and 6 have a common factor. What goes into 4 and 6? 2. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 goes into 6 3 times. Now, what goes into 2 and 3? It's not a trick question. 1. So when you get to this, we call this one and done. This is one and done. It doesn't mean that you have to have a 1 down here. It means that you come up to basically 2 prime numbers. The only thing that goes into it, well, it doesn't have to be 2 primes. The only thing that goes into both numbers would be 1. The only common factor they have is 1, and we call that one and done. Okay, now my GCF, let me change color so you can see what I'm doing. Uh, let's do the pink. So my GCF, that's my 2 numbers here on the side. I multiply those together. And remember, up there we got 4 when we did it the long way, didn't we? Right, up here, when we found the greatest common factor. Now, LCM, think L. So LCM starts with L. So we want to draw a big box L here on the outside. Oops. Oh, wait a minute. Let me do a little erasing. I look a little crazy. So my GCF are my 2 numbers here, and then I draw my big box L. And what I have to do is multiply each number inside that L. So think LCM, draw the L. When you ask for help on this, I'm going to say draw your L. So I'm going to do 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And 8 times 3 is 24. And I believe if we go back up there to the top, we found that our least common multiple, that is the smallest multiple that they have in common, was 24. That's what we came up with when we did it the long way. I already got it. I hope she does some more examples. I am so lost. I'm going to go run off and join the circus. Yes. Okay. We don't want to run. So let me do some examples so you don't run off and join the circus because, you know, they got the little stinky animals and stuff. All right. Oh, I'm recording. I'm sorry. Sorry, parents. All right. Okay. So now we got 20 and 24. I was doing when we do decimals, I have this song, Line Up the Decimals. One parent said she was walking around the house singing that song. Okay, so I'm going to start with 2. Somebody else already sees that 4 goes into both numbers, right? Somebody else already sees, but I like to be dramatic. So what goes into 20 and 24? 2. 2 goes into 20 how many times? 10. 2 goes into 24 how many times? 12. I can go further because I got 2. If I have 2 even numbers, I know I got to do a 2. So you see how we're building our ladder? Okay. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 goes into 12 6 times. Now, what goes into 5 and 6? 1. So we are 1 and done. Once we get to where the only number that goes into both numbers is 1, we are done. My GCF, those are my 2 numbers on the side right here. Why am I talking so loud? That's going to be 2 times 2, which is 4. Y'all can tell I like doing this lesson. Once I learned how to do this way, I was like, I love it. I'm going to show you something else here, what I said about the fractions, but we'll work on that more when we get to it. So my LCM, I have to draw a what? L. So draw my big box L. And so it's 2 times 2 times 5 times 6. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 6 is 120, I think. So that's the smallest multiple that both numbers will go into. 120. If you don't get this part right here down to 1 and done, your LCM is going to be wrong. Your GCF is also going to be wrong. It's just going to be wrong. Okay, so let me show you something else. This is just a little side thing. If I were to simplify 20, if they asked me to simplify 20 over 24, that right there is my simplified fraction. That right there. 8 and 12, 8 over 12. If I was going to simplify that, that's my fraction right there. Okay. Now somebody said, well, what if we did 4? So let me do it right here. You don't have to write this down. So 4 goes into 25 times, 4 goes into 24 6 times. You see we get the same answer? My GCF is 4. That's 2 times 2. And then I multiply these together. My L, 4 times 5 is 20, times 6 is 120. I don't care if you do it this way or if you go straight to that 4, as long as you get there. You might take a little longer to get there than somebody else, but hey, that's okay. And when I work these, y'all, I will do the smallest number just to emphasize the process. So here's our last one for the notes. We have 5 and 25. They both end in 5, so they are divisible by 5. So now you see why we did the divisibility rules. 5 goes into 5 one time. 5 goes into 25 5 times. We are 1 and done because the only thing that will go into 1 and 5 is 1. So my GCF is that number over there on the right, which is 5. And then if I draw my big L, my LCM is 5 times 1 times 5. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So my LCM is 25. I got it. I could do this by myself today. Let's do some more practice, Miss Sledge. I'm still kind of lost. Okay, I don't have anybody lost. Oh, I was going to send somebody off to the circus. Okay. And these 2 videos here from Miss Lott are good. Oh, that reminds me. Let's if you have a little space, let's say I have 4, and 15. What goes into both of those? 1. We're already one and done. So your GCF is 1, and my LCM, just multiply these two numbers. 15 times 4 is 60. Let's say you don't know that 15 times 4 is 60. You can go off here to the side and multiply. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. It's no shame in what I call scribble scrabble off to the side. The more tired I am, the more I scribble scrabble because my brain just can't do the mental math. Did I tell y'all about the time I couldn't multiply 2 and 2?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Okay, so now you're going to get out some paper. You can get out another sheet of paper. If you don't have any more, I have some paper over there. Y'all, I have plenty of paper, so if you need some paper, get some paper. If you need supplies for another class, I do not have a problem you coming here and asking me for it, okay? I have index cards, I got markers, I got all kind of stuff. Because I have wonderful friends. So you're gonna label number 1. What you need, a piece of paper? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot the holes again, y'all. If you need a hole put in yours, Braxton knows how to do that. Today, one of my 8th graders whipped out their notes so fast it scared me. Like, whoa, you really got those notes? You kept those? Yes, you did. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna let them two finish punching holes. Now let's do our first problem. These practice problems, if you want to go home and practice on your own, they are in Schoology right here where it says LCM and GCF practice. I did say graded, but I'm going to work these. It's not going to be graded because I'm working them. Where am I? Okay, so number 1, 66 and 60. They're both even numbers. That ends in 6 and that ends in 0. So I'm going to try 2. What else can I try? I could try 6. Yeah, 6 is actually the number, but I'm going to be dramatic and start with 2. It's actually 6, and I'm going to show you that it is 6, but you're right. But I'm going the long way because I want to show the process. So 2 goes into 66 how many times? I don't know off the top of my head. So there's nothing wrong with me going over here to the right and doing a little scribble scrabble. We know how to divide by now, don't we? So we're going to see how many times 2 goes into 3. That's our divide. 2 goes into 6. That's our divide step. So it goes in there how many times? 3. And then we're going to do our multiply step. 3 times 2 is 6. Our subtract step, 6 minus 6 is 0. And then our bring down step. 2 goes into 6 3 times. Multiply, subtract, nothing to bring down. So 2 goes into 66 33 times. And 2 goes into 60. Big number. 2 goes into 6 how many times? 3 and add a 0. Now let's look at 33 and 30. So we know that they're not both multiples of 10. We got that zero. But we also have a three that it ends in. We know that they're not both even numbers because we have that three. So you're holding your fingers, you're holding up three fingers. How did you figure that out? Just knew it. You just knew 11 times 3 was 33 and 10. Okay. That's one way. So he already knew that 3 times 11 was 33 and 3 times 10 was 30. And plus you have a bunch of threes there, so counter just kind of lends itself to three, right? But if you didn't know, three plus, if you're having one of those days where I couldn't add two and two, three plus three is six, and six is divisible by three. So 33 is divisible by three. We have 30. Three plus zero is three. Three is divisible by three. So 30 is divisible by three. So as I'm awful. Okay, 3 goes into 33 11 times. 3 goes into 30 10 times. Let's say I didn't know 11 times 3 was 33. I can do this to the side. I will not freeze. I'm going to write my division problem over here and I'm going to work it out step by step. There's nothing wrong with that. 3 goes into 3 one time. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract, I get 0. Bring down. 3 goes into 3 one time. Okay, 11 and 10. What goes into 11 and 10? 1. So we are one and done. So my GCF is, as Kelsey said, 6, because it's 2 times 3. And then my LCM, I will not have y'all multiplying that many numbers on the test. So this is 66 times 10. That's 660. Okay, so Kelsey said 6. What would have happened if we had done that? And you can write it beneath it if you want to. So 6 goes into 66 11 times. 6 goes into 60 10 times. You still got there. Your GCF is 6. And then you draw your big L. 6 times 11 times 10 is 660. I don't normally give problems that big on the test. I just did this for practice. Okay, let's look at 44 and 14. So that's number 2. So what goes into both of those? Does 4 go into 14? 4 times what is 14? Somebody said 4. 4 goes into 44. But 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. So 14 is not a multiple of 4. What else are you really? 2? So 2 goes into 44 22 times, and 2 goes into 14 7 times. But suppose I didn't know that. I can go over here to the side. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. Bring down the 4. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract, and I get a 0. So I can go over to the side and work that out. What goes into 22 and 7? Nothing but 1. So we are actually one and done at this point. So our GCF is this number here on the side, which is 2. And my LCM, I draw my big L, is 2 times 22 times 7. I would not have you multiply that out on the test. That'll be 44 times 7, which is 308. Number three is 7 and 56. Okay, at least finally something that makes a little sense. What goes into 7 and 56? Because 7 goes into 7 one time, 7 goes into 56 how many times? Uh-huh. Some of y'all should have your multiplication tables out. Okay. So what goes into 1 and 8? We're one and done, right? So our GCF is this number over here. Everything over to the right is your GCF. Then my LCM is 7. Draw my L. 7 times. And I'm going to start using the dot for multiplication because we use the times sign in earlier grades, but when we get into expressions and equations, x is going to be a variable, and it gets confusing. Now, in other countries, they do multiplication like that, and they write their x's like that, so you can tell the difference. Okay, so we have 7 times 1 times 8. That dot means multiplication. Okay. So 7 times 1 times 8 is 56. Because 7 times 1 is 7 and 7 times 8 is 56, which is not an issue if you have your multiplication tables with you. If I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. Okay, let's look at number 4. 20 and 22. So you should be right. Y'all don't need your computer open. 20 and 22. What goes into 20 and 22? 2. How do you know it's 2? Uh-huh. Both numbers are even because they end in 0 2. Very good. Very good. So we're going to try a 2. 2 goes into 20 how many times? 10. Okay. 2 goes into 22 how many times? 11. Let's say I didn't know that. I'm going to go over here to the side. 2 goes into 2 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract. Bring down. 2 goes into 2 one time. And 1 times 2 is 2. And I subtract and I get a 0. So that's okay. What about 10 and 11? What goes into those? 2 goes into 11? It's not even. It is in 1. So somebody said 1? Yeah, we're one and done right here. Anytime you have a prime number involved, you know you're one and done because the only thing that goes into 11 is 1 and 11. And 11 doesn't go into 10. So what is my GCF? 2. Now, what do I multiply to get my LCM? 2 times 10 times 11. Right. 2 times 10 times 11. And I think that's 220. I don't know what happened to my 0 there. So 2 times 10 times 11, and that's equal to 220. I did the 11 times 2 first and then added a 0. Again, I don't think I'll give you anything that big I'll try not to give you anything that big on a test. Now let's look at 13 and 31. Okay, what goes into both of those numbers? 1. That's it. And so my GCF is 1. And I am not multiplying 13 times 11, times 31. And my LCM is 13 times 31, whatever that might be. Number 6 is 8. Am I going too fast? Y'all can say, Miss Sledge, please slow down. Uh-huh. 200 and who? Okay. It was up here somewhere, but I lost it. Okay. What goes into 8? Get the door from 8 and 42. They're both, you don't have to think of the biggest number. They're both even. So what goes into that ends in 8, that ends in 2. 2. 2 goes into 8 4 times. And let's say I don't know how many times it goes into 42. So I'm going to divide over here to the side, divide to the side. When you get lost, just remember, divide to the side. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. When I subtract, I get 0. I bring down my 2. 2 goes into 2 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. Down to 0. So that's 21. Okay, what goes into 4 and 21? 1. We're 1 and done. So what's my GCF? 2. It's that number over here by itself. And let's draw my big L for LCM. Remember, we're always drawing the L. So 2 times 4 times 21. So that's 21 times 8. 8 and 2 is 16. So my LCM is 168. That is the smallest number that 4 and 21 will go into. I'm sorry, that 8 and 42 will go into. Sorry about that. 8 and 42. And now let's do 16 and 60. Did you need that I moved up? Okay, so now we're going to do 16 and 60. And look, like I said, you don't have to use the biggest number that goes into them because you'll still get there. You will still get there. This problem, whether I start with 2 or 4, I'm still going to get there. All right. So I'm going to start with 2 because they're both even numbers. This ends in 6 and this ends in 0. 2 goes into 16 how many times? Huh? 8. 2 goes into 60 how many times? 30. This is still even. So I can do another 2. 2 goes into 8. How many times does 2 go into 8? 4. And how many times does 2 go into 30? 15. Let's say I didn't know that. Divide to the side, honey. 2 goes into 3 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Bring down my 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. So that's my 15. What goes into 4 and 15? 1. So we are 1 and done. Remember, 1 and done does not mean you need a 1 down there. Some of my students would go down here and divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So there's my 1. And then they say 15 divided by 4. Let's make the 15 a 16 and say it's 1 and 4. Okay. Don't do too much, okay? All right. So what's my GCF? Where you get 4 from? Is it this 4? 2 times 2. And then I'm going to draw my L, my big box L. 2 times 2 times 4 times 15, that's 60, 120. 6 times 4, 20, 240. Again, I won't give you numbers this big on the actual test. 240. All right, you're going to make up your own problems. Try to make up something that's going to be hard for your no, don't do that. Make up a problem with your group and work it. And then we're going to work them together. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do that. All you got to do is think of two numbers and then find, y'all talk to each other. Got it? Y'all not talking to each other back there. Come up with two numbers. Y'all have your multiplication charts up here? Get it out. There's one more over there if you need one. But you should have it in your notebook. Get your notebook out and see if you have. Y'all quit looking at me crazy. Go in your backpack, look in your notebook, and see if you have your multiplication tables. All I need you to think of, all you have to do is think of two numbers. Even if you don't know how to work it, think of two numbers.